Inside new US-Russia peace plan for Ukraine, what we know so far, EU reacts to US peace plan for Ukraine, and how Germany to boost Ukrainians' long-range strike capabilities, details revealed. The latest news next. The administration of US President Donald Trump has prepared a draft peace agreement on Ukraine, which is currently being actively discussed with Europe and representatives of Moscow. Find out everything currently known about the peace plan in RBC Ukraine's report. According to several American media outlets, the peace plan was approved by Trump and developed in consultations between representatives of Washington and Moscow. The document itself has not been officially released. Still, its content is already being actively discussed by diplomats, experts, and the media, as the proposed terms mean radical concessions by Russia and a de facto change in the US position on the war in Ukraine. The plan includes several elements that Kiev has long considered unacceptable, from territorial compensation for the Kremlin to a significant reduction in Ukrainians' defense capabilities. At the same time, it was developed without Ukrainians' participation, which also raises questions among partners. Peace plan main provisions. According to Western media reports, the draft peace plan involves the transfer of territories in eastern Ukraine to Russia, primarily those parts of the Donetsk and Luhansk regions that currently remain under Kiev's control. This effectively means agreeing to Russia's demands regarding the entire Donbas region, even though it would take Russia years to capture these territories by military means. At the same time, the latest data from analysts show that Ukraine still controls about 14 to 15% of the region's territory. In Trump's version, these areas would become demilitarized, formally under Russian control but without Russian troops stationed there. The peace plan also stipulates that Russia would allegedly pay rent for control over Donbas. Under this scenario, Ukraine would not formally change its borders but would allow Moscow to control the territory in exchange for payment. Separate discussions are underway regarding the conditions for the Kherson and Zaporizhia regions, where it is proposed to freeze the front lines at their current positions, with certain details yet to be specified. In addition to the territories, the plan provides for large-scale restrictions on the Ukrainian army, a reduction in numbers, a ban on foreign military missions, and restrictions on weapons systems, in particular long-range strike weapons, which Ukraine currently uses to hit targets in Russia's rear. The document also mentions the curtailment of US military aid and the ban on the deployment of Western troops on Ukrainian territory after the end of the war. In effect, this means renouncing NATO membership, a key demand Russia has been pushing since 2014. In response, Moscow declares its readiness to give guarantees that it will not launch new attacks on Ukraine or other European states, and even promises to formalize these at the legislative level. In addition, the media note that Trump's peace plan includes a clause on the official recognition of the Russian language and guarantees for the Russian Orthodox Church in Ukraine, positions that the Kremlin has been promoting for decades. Peace plan preparation. The peace plan was prepared quietly over several weeks and, according to Western media reports, was coordinated by Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff and Russian negotiator Kirill Dmitriev, head of the Russian Sovereign Wealth Fund. They met in the US, specifically in Miami, where they discussed the parameters and preparation of the text. At the same time, according to Western media sources, Ukraine was informed after the fact and was not invited to participate in the drafting of proposals. However, an informed source at RBC Ukraine reported that Trump's peace plan does not correspond to Ukrainians' interests. According to media reports, the United States made it clear to President Volodymyr Zelensky that Ukraine must accept the framework prepared by Washington for ending the war with Russia. Financial Times correspondent Christopher Miller reported that Ukraine had received an urgent proposal agreed upon by Dmitriev and Witkoff. The document was handed over to the head of the National Security and Defense Council, Rustem Umerov, and according to sources, its content appears to be a proposal effectively equivalent to Ukrainian surrender. In the US, Trump's actions are also not viewed unequivocally. Some American politicians and diplomats learned about the document from the press, as its development did not undergo full interagency coordinations. Some American politicians and diplomats learned about the document from the press, as its development did not undergo full interagency coordination. At the same time, Trump and his team believe that it is necessary to move towards ending the war at any opportunity because prolonging the struggle only increases Russian pressure on the front, and Ukrainians' position is weakening due to corruption scandals and resource depletion. U.S. officials hint that the draft peace plan may be adjusted after consultations with Kiev and Europe, although not everyone believes it is possible to achieve a genuine transformation. Earlier, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio confirmed the development of potential ideas for Trump's peace plan. In addition, Republican Senator Lindsey Graham says he was not aware of the new peace plan. At the same time, he stresses that no agreement would have a chance of success without strong U.S. military support for Ukraine and measures to limit the Kremlin's financial ability to wage war. Any plan to end Russia's war against Ukraine requires the involvement of Ukrainians and Europeans, EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, Kaja Kallas, said during a media briefing ahead of the EU Foreign Affairs Council meeting. Commenting on the reports about the new US peace plan for Ukraine, Kallas noted that this recent news would also be discussed at the meeting of EU foreign ministers.
What we as Europeans have always supported is a long, lasting, and just peace. And we welcome any efforts to achieve that. Of course, for any plan to work, it needs Ukrainians and Europeans on board, so this is very clear.
The EU chief diplomat also noted that it is essential to remember that in the case of the Russia-Ukraine war, there is an aggressor and the country that has been attacked.
So we haven't heard of any concessions on the Russian side. I mean, if Russia really wanted peace, it could have agreed to an unconditional ceasefire already some time ago, whereas we see again over this night bombings of civilians.
She stated that 93% of Russian targets are civilian infrastructure, schools, hospitals, residential buildings, meant to kill many people and cause as much suffering as possible.
We welcome all the meaningful efforts to end this war, but like we have said before, it has to be just and lasting. That also means that the Ukrainians, but also Europeans, agree to this.
Ukraine expects an enhancement of its long-range military capabilities. Germany is approving new deliveries and discussing a support strategy for the coming month, according to Anadolu agency. Germany has confirmed preparations to supply Ukraine with long-range missiles. At a press conference in Berlin, Chancellor Friedrich Merz stated that technical consultations with Kiev have been ongoing for several months and are now in the final stages. He noted the Ukrainian army will be equipped with such weapon systems, though he did not provide specifics on quantities or delivery timelines. According to the Chancellor, this approach is intended to make it harder for Russia to assess Ukrainians' actual capabilities. A certain ambiguity is necessary, especially for the Russian side, he emphasized, adding that support will continue and may include the production of missile systems on Ukraine territory. Berlin's position amid Russian attacks. Merz stated that Russia is deliberately striking Ukrainian civilian energy infrastructure ahead of winter, describing Moscow's actions as a terrorist war against the civilian population. Germany intends to strengthen Ukrainian's air defense system. Next year, Kyiv will receive an additional 3 billion euros in military aid. The Chancellor also expressed hope that the EU will soon approve a mechanism to use frozen Russian assets to financially support Ukraine. Germany plans to increase support for the Pearl initiative, under which NATO allies purchase US weapons for Ukraine, and is preparing an additional contribution of at least 150 million euros to accelerate deliveries and expand aid. The Donald Trump administration approved a potential deal to sell Germany's surface-to-air missiles worth about $3.5 billion, seen as part of Berlin's efforts to strengthen its own air defense and further enhance the country's military capabilities. On Thursday, November 20th, Ukrainian Prime Minister Yulia Sviridenko met with U.S. Army Secretary Daniel Driscoll.
Pleased to welcome Honourable Daniel P. Driscoll, Secretary of the U.S. Army, on his first visit to Ukraine. This visit provides an important opportunity for the senior military officials accompanying the Secretary to assess the situation on the ground and to witness firsthand the consequences of Russian aggression.
According to her, at a time when Russia continues to kill our people, target residential buildings with missiles, and strike critical infrastructure, the strategy of putting pressure on Russia remains effective. It is crucial to further strengthen energy and financial sanctions against the aggressor state, the Prime Minister stresses. Sviridenko also confirms that the U.S.-Ukraine Investment Fund for Reconstruction, initiated by U.S. President Donald Trump, has successfully begun its work and is expanding its activities. U.S. generals visit to Kyiv. Yesterday, November 19th, U.S. President Donald Trump sent a high-level Pentagon delegation to Kyiv. The purpose of the visit is to resume negotiations with Russia on ending the war. U.S. Army Secretary Daniel Driscoll, along with the two four-star generals, is to hold talks with the President Volodymyr Zelensky and other Ukrainian officials, as well as senior officials and industry representatives. According to the RBC Ukraine source, Zelensky meeting with the American generals is scheduled to take place today, November 20th, in the afternoon. According to available information, the American generals will urge the Ukrainian president to reach a peace agreement with Russia. That's all for today. Thanks for watching this video. Support Ukraine, like and subscribe.